Since President Dwight D. Eisenhower, top secret files were created concerning off-world activity and visits to planet Earth. Undoubtedly, over the decades, these files have grown. Area 51 is commonly known. We've heard and seen images of UFOs, but not until now has this been validated and presented to the American people and to the world, as President Donald J. Trump released the first tranche of top-secret files. This is the beginning. There's much more to come. Join John Michael Chambers and guests on a new monthly panel, JMC Broadcast, Off-World with JMC. Premiere episode launches Thursday, June 18th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Subscribe for free by visiting jmcbroadcasting.com and join us on this intriguing and challenging journey together, taking the Great Awakening to new and higher heights. Come travel through the portal with us. Where we go one, we go all. Don't miss this month's live Patriot Q&A Hour as John Michael Chambers hosts our Patriot Power guest, private investigative journalist Mike King. Get your questions answered. Mark your calendars. June 25th, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time sharp. Visit jmcbroadcasting.com and click on the Premium Portal Sign-Up tab. Enter your password and you're in. Not a JMC Broadcasting Premium member yet? You could be. Simply click on the Premium Portal Sign-Up tab. Enter your info, and that's it. John and Mike, looking forward to answering your questions for the solid hour. See you there. Where we go one, we go all.
All right, Wednesday, June 24th, 2026. I am John Michael Chambers, and welcome back to the Global Financial Reset, Surviving and Thriving the Transition. And joining me today in just a moment is AJ Monte and retired Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox. A couple of quick announcements. Well, first off, joining us next week is Will Barney and Bill Armour. And next week, this is an announcement, will be our final weekly live GFR. We will begin broadcasting the live GFR only monthly. Beginning in August, we will be a monthly broadcast. I'll be doing a supplemental show specifically on precious metals in addition to the monthly GFR. Stay tuned for further announcements, and thank you for joining us here today. Let's get right into it. The information provided by me and my guests is for educational purposes only and is not to be considered as specific investment, tax, nor legal advice. You're encouraged to do your own research and consult your financial, legal, and tax professionals. And to that point, visit wealthcoachuniversity.com. Scroll down a bit. You'll see a little blue tab. Click on that tab. It's downloadable and readable. It is really just 10 isolated points, questions you might want to ask of the advisors that you're working with presently to make sure you have the right team. Go woke, go broke, particularly in this transition environment. So that's a good resource for you. All right, so let's launch into this broadcast now. Joining us is AJ Monte. He is a market analyst and trader. AJ Monte is a chartered market technician, CMT, and founder of StickyTrades.com, bringing 43 years of extensive experience as a market analyst. And boy, is there a lot to analyze in this two-tiered system we're in the middle of. A distinguished career of leadership, is a member of the Market Technicians Association, former chairman of Options Floor Trading Committee, 10-year member of the Comex, is a best-selling author, Take Charge of Your Money Now, and another book, The Market Guys, 5 Points for Trading Success. Please welcome, pardon me again, first time to the GFR, AJ Monte.
Thank you, John. Appreciate you having me on here, and another happy birthday wish to you today. Glad to see you, that you and I are still kicking it.
We're still kicking it. 68, and there's hopefully so many more ahead. but thank you for that. And thanks for being here. Nice to meet you. We chatted briefly to our audience, AJ and I, very briefly, first time we met a few moments ago. We're going to, all of us, get to learn a little bit more about the value and his experience through his lens of what he sees going on in this market. And it's fascinating, of course, because as I've stated briefly in my intro, we have our existing system, which is being dismantled. And when you think of the central bank and the powers of the Federal Reserve, the new currency that the president's talking about, with the SWIFT system going away, crypto, quantum, we've got a lot of different things. And then the new system that's being, excuse me, set in place. And that creates a lot of confusions for people. Talk with us, if you will. Well, first off, I learned in our green room discussion that you are a retired Navy. Is that accurate?
I am retired forcefully due to an injury. I wish it was the way our Lieutenant Colonel retired, but I had an injury when I was in the service, so I was not able to continue. Had I not been injured, I'd probably still be in there somehow, some capacity. But yeah, be careful when we start talking about military experiences. The show could go from an hour to 3 hours very quickly. And you're not kidding when you talk about confusion in the world, not just in the financial markets, but everywhere you look, it seems that there's new things happening, changing. And whether it comes to military technology, AI, it's all bundled up, and it's creating a lot of confusion. But at the same time, there's a lot of opportunity as well.
Yes, thank you. Talk with us about the vault. What is the vault? What is that all about?
JD Vance, a couple of months ago, basically brought together a very large group of countries to more or less create a coalition of sorts that would run more or less parallel and opposite to the BRICS nations, and basically focused on critical metals, precious metals, and the way the future will look for world trade, with, of course, the US being at center stage. So there's a lot of things going on there. I mean, we could talk just for an hour just on the vault and what's happening, but JD Vance brought it all together under the request and guidance of Donald Trump. And there's so much just on that, where you have these countries agreeing to trade with the US, not just oil, critical metals, mining rights and such, but to trade in the US dollar, which basically protects the US dollar as the global reserve currency, where BRICS was trying to replace the US dollar with their own gold-backed currency, and that put the big kibosh on everything in a very short period of time. So it threw things in more or less disarray for BRICS, especially Russia and China, who are now trying to figure out how to deal with Donald Trump and the US moving forward on so many different levels. But like I said before, with all that, it looks like controlled chaos. There's just so much opportunity. It's hard to even pick which is the best of the best opportunities there. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot happening. What'd you make of President Trump, fresh off the heels of UFC 250 Freedom, walking into the G7 and announcing, "I am the boss"? What do you
It's
think?
Donald Trump. I mean, even in his first 4 years, he would walk on the global stage and literally just push global leaders aside so he'd straighten his lapel and let the world know who's in charge. I mean, that's what Americans want. They want a leader. They don't want a weak follower who's just so woke that they're just going with the wind. We have a leader. Obviously, I'm a Trump fan, so yeah, I don't know the majority of your audience here, but we
Oh
need
yeah.
Donald Trump as the leader, no doubt about that. And he's bringing everything together, unifying the party, and just making changes faster than most had even imagined. He's
Yes, I
doing the
mean, I
job.
think of the song. You bet. I think of the song back in the probably 60s, maybe early 70s, from the group from England called The Who. Meet the new boss. In this case, it's not the same as the old boss, which
Hmm.
is something we hadn't had pretty much most of our time here. So it's a very welcoming situation, our president. I want to touch on briefly data centers because there's a lot to unpack there. Then we're going to get into sectors of the markets, talk about critical minerals and so forth. But data centers, I'm going to read a few things I pulled off of some research. Trump, as I understand, just classified AI data centers as military installations. An executive order was cited 14318, signed on June 2nd. And according to this research, buried on page 14 of the Federal Register. Not one cable news network, of course, has covered it with any respectful time, but every major AI data center in the United States, as I understand, is now classified at PHUPHAZ.369 for those that want to look at this as a military operation. Data centers, a military operation. Local governments can no longer block them. State regulations no longer apply. Any comments at any entry point or level, even if a 40,000-foot view on what data centers are, the good, the bad, and the ugly, if you have any opinions about that?
Well, you don't really have to dig too deep to see how brilliant this move is. Yeah, obviously it's an executive order that over time may be reversed. We don't know, but with the Department of Energy right there controlling the data centers under Donald Trump's authority, there's definitely going to be a need because as we grow AI and as we talk more about the quantum science and what's happening there, you're going to need a lot more power to generate the computers that run the AI, that run the world, that run the economy, that run crypto. So there's going to be a big drain on the power grid. So they have to put it under the military arm because of the threat from outside of more or less attacking the power grid that could shut things down. And when you start dealing with AI to the level where Donald Trump is looking to push it, I mean, it's going to be controlling so much that you get an enemy force coming in, infiltrating and pulling the plug. You know, there's a huge threat, not just to the economy, but to the financial markets and everything attached. So these are things that are happening and changing very quickly. And for those Americans who are not paying attention as close as they should, you're going to be more or less distracted by the noise. I would say the media, it's going to try to keep your attention away from what's really happening. But I think it's all good. But I have to say this from my analyst side of me coming out, you have to be really careful over who gets control of all this power. This talk of Google coming in or Alphabet Inc. controlling a lot of what's happening. And when you get this more or less control over the American people, now you got to watch. I mean, that could flip very quickly to be more harmful to the American citizens than to be a benefit. So I'm just looking at both sides of that equation to keep people on guard more or less because you got to question everything nowadays. I mean, just to give you an example, AI. The AI has gotten so good that you could go on any of these social media platforms and it's getting harder and harder to tell the difference between an AI generated video versus a real one. So now, what's the truth? I mean, am what I seeing here in this video of this alien spacecraft landing on the White House lawn real? You don't know, and so you like I said, you got to question everything. And as an analyst, I don't just take everything at face value. I'm going to cross reference it. I'm going to check it. I'm going to double check it and then I'll make my decisions from there. But yeah, we're definitely seeing a lot of change in that area as well.
I think our audience what you've stated resonates quite well with certainly me, and I believe our audience, that we have great concerns about AI and robotics. Uh, Whoever is in control of that could flip on the human race. But we're going to
Mhm.
save that discussion for another day. Let's win the battles that we're fighting right now. Trust that it's in good hands with our commander in chief at the helm, and we'll revisit in future broadcasts the dangers of AI and robotics down the line. But thanks for commenting on all that. I want to ask you about precious metals. Um, we've covered this very extensively on this broadcast each and every week with Will Barney and Bill Armour and Rob Cunningham and many others. Like you to weigh in, and we've got a huge pullback right now in both gold and silver. I, for one, it's a buying opportunity as I see it. Everything that I've learned from following the administration and our great guests, I come to the conclusion that this is a buying opportunity. But what do you see happening with gold and silver right now? Why is it pulling back? And when you peel back the curtain with the banks and the futures trading, we see countries and institutions paying far more than the spot price on silver right now, contracts. Strip that down for us so our audience
Well,
understands what's happening.
now you're in my wheelhouse, John, because
Good.
it was actually August 15th, 1982 is when I stepped foot on the trading floor in the World Trade Center, which was Comex, and I began
Yes.
my career in the precious metals trading pits, gold and silver in particular. We traded copper as well. But early on in my career, I had a front row seat to witness the pure and sheer manipulation of the metals market.
Mhm.
So what you're seeing on the way up was not a manipulation on the way up. That was just the shorts covering, because for the most part, the institutions are going to be short precious metals in an attempt to try to control commodity prices. Because if you could lean on gold and silver, you can pretty much keep all commodity prices at the lower levels, which helps keep inflation numbers in check. But when they started covering, especially JP Morgan and some of the other big houses, we had silver run up. It looked like it was going to $600 an ounce. You had all kinds of, podcasters and vloggers talking about how it's going to 5,000 an ounce. And there you go. You got the emotional content charging the market. What we're seeing now is the reentry of the institutions to manipulate it lower. Now that has not at all changed the crisis that we're seeing with regard to the shortage and supply of silver in particular. Silver is not just your average metal. It's now been classified by our government, to Department of Interior to be exact, to be a strategic metal. It's not a critical, it's a strategic metal that is needed for military, for computers, for AI. And no matter what happens with the price, there's still a shortage. And Comex is running out of silver in their vaults. And so I agree with you that this is a buying opportunity, but you also have to be strategic with how you're doing that. Now, this is what I spend a lot of time teaching people how to accumulate silver by using the option markets. Now, we'll save that for another show perhaps, but how to use the option markets to not just get the silver in your hands or the ETF in your portfolio, but how to pull money from the market by selling other types of options to lower your cost basis. And for your viewers out there, without me going into a 20-minute presentation on how this strategy works, go search on YouTube or Google or Grok or any of the AI programs, research the wheel strategy, like the wheel on a car. Search and research the wheel strategy. And once you learn how to embrace that strategy, you're going to see a much different, I would say, approach to the market. You're not going to be stressed out. You're actually welcoming the markets to go a little bit lower before they go higher. So I trade the ETFs, and I also accumulate the physical metals. So the physical metals that I accumulate, I don't ever sell. I just accumulate them for the stay for the trust. But the ETFs I trade in and out of, and I'm having an absolute field day right now because of the added premium. Right now, the better buys, I think, and I even mentioned this to a group of our members in the last webinar we had this evening, that if you are looking at the mining stocks, I think those are better opportunities right now than the actual ETFs that cover the metals themselves, because silver is still at the elevated levels. You have to understand that we're still above what was the all-time high of silver of $50. So the profit margins for the miners are still elevated. So they're going to see increased earnings quarter after quarter. So if you're building a portfolio of precious metals and mining companies, I would look at the less expensive mining companies, even the copper miners. If I could so mention some ticker symbols for you, FCX, Freeport McMoran. These are not recommendations. These are just examples to look at. Like you said in the beginning with your disclaimer, we're not giving financial advice, but FCX is one I have my eye on. Pan American Silver, ticker symbol PAAS. You could look at AG. You could look at First. You could look at even IAU is a gold ETF. There's just a good handful of stocks, and I would not even shy away from that. It would just be very, very strategic and calculated. Well, you got to watch out for. I don't want to go off topic here. You got to watch out for SpaceX and the IPOs that are trying to come out with a big push, like OpenAI. I think those are going to be historic pump and dumps that are going to trap a lot of people, unfortunately, into that hype. And already people are losing money on SpaceX, and we're not even a week out, just barely a week after the IPO. So, yeah, there's a lot to unwrap there for sure, but lots of opportunity. That's all I see is opportunity in that sector.
Thank you. You've brought a new narrative to this broadcast. We cover gold and silver. We predominantly speak about, as you own as well, owning the physical, tangible bullion of gold and silver for obvious reasons. But for those that are interested in doing, active trading versus holding the physical metal for the leverage against the dollar and inflation and so forth and so on, is there a website that you have that you can direct people to sort of follow your strategies concerning the paper trading of this? Is there a place that you can direct the public?
Well, I have my X page, which is the option Oracle, and I post all of my silver trades on there as I'm doing them. And a lot of times I'll give the audience a lead of 5 minutes before I actually put the trade in, because I don't usually like to trade ahead of my audience. I know a lot of people do that, but I'd rather give the audience the benefit first before I get in there. But I also very public on YouTube. I have the Sticky Trades channel where we do multiple broadcasts during the week where we're looking at live charts. But John, as I mentioned in the green room warm up there, my biggest concern is I want to get the word out to people who are getting lured by the hype and the greed factor, because those are the people that are going to get hurt the most. So if you keep your wits about you and you try to pull the emotion out of it and you simply look at the charts and learn how to read the charts will actually talk to you through the signals that are thrown off. And right now, we're holding the highest percentage of hit rates for targets. 82.2% of the targets that I put out wind up hitting over a 60 trading day period. So there's no one in the world that can match that. And I would love to say, oh, I'm clairvoyant in that area, and I'm not. I'm just a good chart reader. So the charts have never been more accurate in history as they are right now. So if you learn how to read the charts, learn how to read basic signals, it'll keep you out of trouble and help you with managing risk as well.
Excellent. Thank you. What would be your forecast, for lack of a better word, on once silver and gold have the handcuffs fully off from the manipulators, and that's coming to an end at some point, as I see it. What do you see? The president's talked about repricing gold to 20,000 plus an ounce. It's marked at $42, I think, on the Fed's balance sheet. And then you've got talk about silver because of how critically important it is, as you mentioned earlier, having a floor price set. These are gifts. Both of these are gifts to
No,
anybody
absolutely.
who's owns metals. What's your forecast? Conservative, your conservative forecast and your crystal ball time frame of when, where will silver ultimately, when it breaks out and they don't have the control mechanisms and some of these regulations come in place, where do you see silver priced at come the end of this year, beginning of next year? And where do you see gold priced at end of this year, beginning of next year? Again, I realize
All
it's
right.
a
Now,
future statement, but
yeah,
go ahead.
now I'm gonna be very, very conservative here, and I'm gonna try something. I don't know if we could do this. I'm gonna try to share my charts with you here and sharing my screen with you, if I may. So I'm gonna bring this up and say, all right, let me see if I can pull this up and do this. I don't know if you've had anyone share the screen on with you here. Here we
We've
go.
done it.
Looking,
Yeah,
can you see this? This is a chart of silver
we
right
got
here.
it.
This is all
We,
right. This
we
is
got it.
silver futures market. Okay, so this is the 120 level that we hit in February of last year. Okay, so this was obviously the short covering that came in here, and then we had the big push lower. Okay, so now we're at a critical point that I spoke about earlier, where if I back out and look at an all-time month chart, this pattern here is known as a cup and handle pattern. Now, I also write articles for Zero Hedge, so when we were at these lows down here, I had put the forecast that we would get back up to $50 on silver and get the breakout, and that's usually what you see. So the forecast was perfect. So to just give the audience a little bit of a lesson, to measure the move or to forecast where prices are going to go when it breaks out, you take the depth of this cup and you attach it to the breakout point. There you go. It hits the target perfectly. But, and here's the exciting part, silver has pulled back all the way to the original breakout point. So what you see most of the time, and I would say most being about 90% of the time, most of the time you'll get bounces or pivots higher here. So while everyone who owns silver wants it to go to $600 overnight, I'm going to say by the end of the year, I think conservatively, you're going to see this up around $90 again, then another little pullback, and then I think you're going to see the launch to $200 an ounce after that. So the immediate round turn to 200 could be anywhere between 3 and 5 years. Now, before you get discouraged and say, "Oh man, I wanted to cash out before I retired," or cash out so I could retire, understand that the markets are going to give you enough time to accumulate. Let me get back to my screen here. It's going to give you enough time to accumulate the metals while it's lower. So you shouldn't be fearing the lower prices. You should be rubbing your hands together and saying, "Oh man, I get another chance to take some of my profits and put it more into the silver mining and metals companies." And then using the options, what you might think is 100% move back up to the highs could wind up being a 400% profit from where we are now to the highs if you're using the option markets correctly. And I'm not talking about advanced option concepts. I'm talking about using the wheel strategy, like I mentioned, by selling calls against long positions, taking in cash, using that cash to buy more silver, and then selling more calls. Now, it sounds crazy and maybe complicated, but I did that today. I sold calls that expire on July 24th, and I got a nice little credit that I used, again, taken from the market, free cash from the market, and I bought more SLV with it today while it was on the lows. So I'm not
Mhm.
I'm not wishing it to go back up to the highs, not until I'm done accumulating more at these levels. So if anyone in your audience is feeling stressed out that prices are dropping, I'd say take a deep breath, focus on your charts, get excited, and follow the leaders who know how to do this, and you're going to be absolutely fine. I'm one of those leaders, and I know at least a couple of handfuls of traders like myself who hold the same opinion about the precious metals markets. Yeah. Now,
Mhm.
gold,
Well, thank you.
gold
Yeah.
is, yeah, yeah,
Go
gold.
ahead.
I think once gold gets priced, again, once they revalue gold, you got to understand that that's going to help. It's going to help the balance sheets because all the gold that's being held in Fort Knox right now is priced at around a little over $40 an ounce. So what that's going to do
Mhm.
is once they revalue it and put a floor on it, it's going to give Donald Trump and the Treasury a lot more wiggle room, and they're not going to pay down the debt, but mind you, they're going to borrow more money against that, which could stimulate the economy even more. So there's a lot of different theories of what that will do to not just the economy, but to the financial markets. And then, I mean, I've been following you for a little while. Eventually we're going to have to talk about stablecoin and the possibility of gold backing stablecoin to peg it
Mhm.
so that inflation will no longer have an effect on the currency in the US dollar in digital
Yes.
format, in digital form. You say that's going to be the key,
Yeah.
eliminating the
So let me
ability
let
to
me
spend
interject.
money. Yeah. Go ahead.
Sure. Let me interject right there. That's such an important point about the stable coin transition. In keep it simple, Sam, world that I'm in, would it be a fair statement? And what we have right now, of course, is the Federal Reserve note, known as the U.S. dollar. And while it's over 100 on the dollar index today, uh, trajectory wise, this thing is heading down. Uh, and the
Oh,
sooner the
absolutely.
better because its money is debt. Then we have the submergence at some point of the Treasury backed constitutional God's money as teased out by the Treasury Department on March 26th press release. So Fed note, Treasury note, Treasury note becomes our new dollar over time, dominating the collapsing Federal Reserve note. Are you saying at some point then our new paper Treasury note, backed by gold and perhaps other commodities, sound money restored, is there then a transition that takes those papers? We are given an option to move it into a stable coin. Again, I'm keeping it simple, but
Yeah,
is that would that
this
be
is
the
gonna
logical trajectory?
yeah, this is the logical trajectory, but you have to understand this is going to shake a lot of people up because people
Yes.
tend to fear what they don't understand, right? We're used to taking
Mhm.
dollar bills out of our wallet and paying someone in cash or using our debit card, which simulates
Mhm.
the dollar transaction. But what you're talking about here is basically the elimination of the Federal Reserve note,
Mhm.
which is going to be a
That's
huge
right.
shakeup, not just within our economy, but the global economy. Because once the American people now have full control of their own currency through the US Treasury, that digital
Mhm.
currency is a Treasury note. It's not a Federal Reserve note. It's a Treasury note. And
Yes.
if it is backed by gold, or even a small percentage of it being backed by gold, eliminates the inflation because you can't print gold in the Federal Reserve warehouses. You can't just print it out on some printer somewhere. So that now there's going to be a lot of pushback because the Fed's not just going to yield and say, "Oh, we give up Donald Trump. Okay, you're a good guy," and Kevin Warsh becomes his best friend and starts working for the Treasury. There's going to be a lot of kicking and screaming along the way, and that's where I think more confusion, more I would even say negative news or even false news, lies actually are going to come out what's happening. But if people do their homework and they really dig in to what's happening and how good that could be, there's a trade-off. There's pros and cons. The pro is that you're going to have inflation under control and you'll be able to earn in dollars and not have to worry about inflation or price at the pumps going up out of control, eating into your buying power. The negative side of that, and this is a tough one. It's a tough one for me to talk about because I'm a constitutional guy all the way, John. I think you are too. We are going to have to give up some of our privacy when it comes to a digital stable coin because you go into you go to pay for your gas and you go buy a pack of gum or a Twinkie off the shelf. The U.S. government's going to know how much you spent in stable coins on that Twinkie when you get back in your car. They're going to know everything about you and your spending habits. The other side of that, and you got to watch because this happened in Canada, right, with the truckers. If all of a sudden you get the wrong power in the White House or in our government, while Donald Trump is right now the hero for most Americans, what happens if someone else gets in there and starts controlling your freedoms with regard to how you spend your money? And then all of a sudden your bank account is locked up. Those are real concerns we got to watch out for. So the bottom line is it's one of the reasons why I'm holding on to the physical metal. Now, this might sound crazy, but my wife and I, we have a little homestead farm. We raise our own chickens, our eggs, we grow our own vegetables. We've got all the manure you want for fertilizer, but we also have contractors that come on and we've conditioned them to exchange value in more or less a barter through physical metal. I actually pay people in physical metal. And now it's not that we're trying to skirt taxes. We get receipts for everything. We write everything off as expenses, but you have to have some sort of a backup plan in the event that things start to get a little crazy and you don't know how to survive. You got to know the survival tactics, I think, as we go through these transitions. And I think they're going to be enormous changes for people, especially the older generation that's not quite catching up to the advancement of technology through AI and other forms of crypto currency. So I would say to our generation, John, I'm right behind you. I'm only a week away from my birthday, same age as you. We have to educate people on how to stay nimble because I certainly don't want to be like how my grandmother was, and she didn't even know how to, turn on the television with the remote control. I mean, we don't want to be that generation. The younger generation has a huge advantage, but they also have a lot to learn from the older generation that's been around the block, especially in the financial markets. Right? We got a lot to teach people, and you're doing a great job. And I'm actually happy to hear that you're making the change to monthly because that's going to allow you a lot more time for production and building solid content that'll go a lot longer rather than doing weekly. I like that idea that you're switching to the monthly. That's excellent. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, and that actually was one of the reasons I've considered to make that change. I think next week is our last weekly, and then we'll launch monthly in August. But thanks for all those talking points. Now, let's switch gears. Segments moving along pretty quickly here. Clarity Act. Where is that at? House and Senate status? How do you see that playing out? To me, that's critically important.
Well, I think it's stuck at the Senate. I haven't been staying on top of
Yeah,
that,
it's
but you
yeah,
have to understand that
yeah.
as we come into the midterms, you could see what's going on. There's still a lot of rhinos in there that are pushing back against Trump.
Yeah.
So, and even Trump today is holding things up. He doesn't want to pass any legislation until we get the voting rights and the Save America Act put out. So I think Donald Trump is going to lock things up. And if he's doing that, then you know how the game is played in Washington. They're going to lock him up as well. So there's going to be, I think there's going to be a stall there for at least a little while. But after the midterms, I think, again, this is my opinion. I don't want to go too far down the political analysis, but I think we're going to see. I think we're going to see a red wave, and then the politicians that survive through the midterms are going to understand they better get in line and start voting for the American people rather than for their those who give them the money and for their own agendas. So I think we're going to see a lot of great things happening in November and beyond. And then we'll have to see who's going to fill Donald Trump's shoes. I mean, I know JD Vance is doing a lot of great things, and a lot of people are counting on him, but Marco Rubio is doing some great things too. So we'll have to see how that
Yeah.
plays out.
Well, if I had the time and interest, I'd be penning the book titled right now "Life Beyond Trump," and that would be a bestseller as long as it was written well. That is always a question on my mind. Life beyond Trump, but let's, we're in the thick of so many battles right now, restoring our freedom. I don't even want to go that far out there just yet, but I do want to ask you about XRP. I've learned from our guests that I believe there are 8 or 9 or something of that sort, ISO compliant cryptocurrencies. I've learned a little bit about XRP and some others that are contracted with the government, even perhaps with the central banks, and the important critical role, let's say, XRP is going to play. While it won't be long lived, because, in my opinion, because technology is going to change so rapidly down the road, things will change. But there seems to be a huge opportunity in XRP, especially with the massive pullback in cryptos right now. Any commentary on XRP? And I single that one out because a lot of people always ask me about it, not just because I own it. But what's your
Well,
take on XRP?
I'm trading it. It's taken a hit recently. I mean, the whole Bitcoin
Yeah.
and crypto related stocks have taken a huge hit, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, you have to understand. You mentioned earlier about the Swift system and how that's being replaced, and with AI coming in, working tandem with crypto and ledgers and all the technology involved with that. I mean, transactions are going to be processed in lightning speed. And
Mhm.
it's like anything else, technology will advance. We'll have to see how long XRP stays in place. But not everyone is
Yeah.
bought into the XRP story either. There's competitors out there that's still trying to grab some of that market share. So, but in the meantime, I'm trading it from the long side, in and out, through my Coinbase account. And right now it's down, but I think we'll see some support here and some pivots higher in a little bit. Yeah.
That's encouraging. Good. Just a real quick, take your temperature on the basics that are out there right now. We've learned a lot about, particularly from Juan O'Savin and from Jamie Dimon, about great concern in the bond market. I'll break that down into two broad categories. One, of course, is the municipal bonds, particularly the school bonds. This is something that's of great concern to Juan O'Savin, who knows a thing or two about markets, as well as Jamie Dimon, not a friend of mine, but he's concerned. So you've got big problems brewing in the municipal bond market. Then you've got Japan and China looking at the treasuries they own. What
Hmm.
combined probably 3-4 trillion, and China scaled back down to about 700 billion now from over 1 point something trillion. That's a big move and a big sale of treasury notes. To me, and I'm a simple guy and I'm not an expert in this area, but I think that while they're separate bonds and mechanics, none of it looks good to me right now. What's your take on
I,
bonds, municipal bonds, and
yeah.
the sell-off of Japan and China?
With regard to Jamie Dimon, I don't know which side he's coming from. I hear him talking for a very long time how overbought the markets are, how we're going to see a crash soon, and then another report comes out and he's bullish on this or bullish on that. So I don't really know what to say about Jamie Dimon, but I will say this: that the bond market, um, and we might go down a rabbit hole here, but there's a lot of talk, and I don't know what kind of evidence there is to back this up, but I'm hearing a lot of talk of Trump making moves to eliminate the debt. So how do you do that to the tune of what, almost $40 trillion?
Mhm.
If and you probably know a lot more about this, the America, the corporation holding the debt,
Yes,
right? If they bankrupt the
correct.
corporation, who takes the hit? The creditors. That's China, that's Japan. That's going to disrupt the global economies, the global markets. So if that happens, and again, this could be a rabbit hole, then there's going to have to be some very fast moves being made to save or salvage the especially the financial markets as they come into a crash. Long term, I think we're going to see a crash in the market, not a pullback. Short term, I still think there's a lot of hype on the upside, but if you're a bond investor right now, I would say call a bond specialist, especially if you're in retirement years, and set up bond ladders and look more towards the munis, and the tax advantages there than to go full speed and just not ladder it with different expirations. So yeah,
It,
I'm more of a precious metals guy. Go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, well, when listening to your commentary on the bonds, off the heels of what I stated, it's a minefield and a lot of unknowns. You raised an interesting point. I can't wait to bring Tom Lennox on to comment on some of the things you and I just now speaking about. But um, the problems that could ensue with Japan and China, as you just indicated, um, should be interesting. Let's see what happens. I want to move on to stocks. Your take, there's some folks that feel we're going to have a severe crash in the stock market. Some say it'll be by design, a controlled demolition to clean it out. Others say Dow could go to 60,000. Not greatly concerned. I'll say this: Juan O'Savin has stated on air with me, recent episode. He expects perhaps a correction in the stock market at some point, but not a complete demolition and a short-lived correction. He's more concerned about the bonds. What's your take on stocks?
I'm not going to go against 107 with regard to his forecast, but I think we would see much more than a severe correction. And the reason for that is the institutions are all in at the top. And I could use SpaceX as this example, how just last Tuesday, week from yesterday, they launched the IPO on SpaceX, came out at, initially at 135 was the target, opened up at 150, traded up to 210, and now the selling is coming in. That is the most manipulated IPO in the history of the market. And I'm not saying that off the cuff. I'm saying that as fact. There's only 5% of the float available to the general public and the institutions, which means this is one of the biggest cash outs for Elon Musk because his valuation of the company now has given him such a huge level of equity that now he's going to be borrowing against his equity in SpaceX to go buy more companies. It's like, and I talked about this yesterday on our market report. Imagine, someone going into the real estate market and last year they buy the house for $700,000. And in a matter of days now, the house is now being valued at $7 million. Well, I think you'd be foolish not to borrow against that equity. At least take $1 million out of the 7 million equity and do something with it, right? That's what Elon Musk is doing. But he's got all his buddies on the institutional side keeping it up as high as they can until he's ready to cash out, right? So what's happening is Elon Musk is going to them and saying, okay, well, here, I'm going to have all this equity. You help me keep this stock going. You keep putting good reports out. Of course, this hypothetical and what I think is happening, but then I'll come back to you and I'll be borrowing all that money from the JP Morgans and the other houses that are willing to give me money. So everyone's happy. So right now, you got an AI bubble. You've got the Qs. The NASDAQ market is so overvalued. I mean, you look at the Schiller PE ratio, most overvalued market ever in history. You look at the Buffett indicator, which measures the GDP as compared to the market cap, extremely overbought. So this is what creates the bubbles. Now, after 43 years in the market, I've seen my share of crashes. The crash of 2000, called it. Crash of 2008, called it in 2007. I didn't call the COVID crash. That one caught me by surprise. But in March of 2020, we were right there buying it after that pullback. So again, the charts were doing a great job. But right now, technical charts are showing the most overvalued market in history, and it's almost it's hard to even justify some of the prices. So eventually, things have to come back to norm. Right now, they've got the financial markets. The engine of the financial markets is redline right now. They're going to keep going as hard as they can until something breaks, and then watch out below. You won't be able to get out fast enough. But we're prepared for that. Again, through the option markets, there's a lot you could do to prepare and even make money in a crash instead of just surviving through a crash, like many people did in 2008. Yeah.
Thank you. We're going to bring Tom Lennox on in just a few minutes, but before we do, what's your take? We've got Kevin Warsh now in as the Fed chairman. We're anticipating interest rate drops. We haven't gotten one yet, I don't believe, but we're anticipating that. And what's your take on real estate during this global financial reset transition? Is real estate something you favor or you caution about at this time?
It depends on what type of real estate. I can only, again, speak from experience. What I do in the silver markets is I deal with the cattle ranchers. So I'm into, farmland and agricultural properties where most banks are not going to give you a mortgage on that. However, owners of the property who own it outright and clear are absolutely willing to negotiate. So I find that the agricultural opportunity is much, much better, especially if you could pull an income out of those properties. So uh, the residential side, not so bullish. I think there's still some more downside there. Agricultural side,
Mhm.
very bullish. Think of them as
Okay.
land banks. I mean, I think that's the best way to look at the real estate market. You got to break it into segments.
Yeah, well, those are important segments, and it makes sense to me. Oil, I think, is at $73 this morning. The operation in Iran, although there are still aspects ongoing, in terms of the Straits of Hormuz and the stranglehold that they had on that through London and so forth, that's been altered. Thank you, President Trump. And now we
Mhm.
have oil down at 73. Where do you see when all is said and done over there in the Middle East, particularly Iran right now? And you fast forward, I don't know, 6 months, a year from now, do you see oil manipulation ending? Because that's been controlled by the other side to help create inflation and booms and busts. Where do you see oil properly trading at down the line when the games are over?
Well, I look at everything technically because when you're dealing with Iran and the whole process of going through these peace agreements, is pieces on, pieces off, oil's up, oil's down. What do? I focus on the charts. I actually think oil is going to rally from these levels, maybe a little bit lower, but I think you're going to see it back up into low to mid 80s before we see the big correction lower. And even
Okay.
before we were talking about peace, Donald Trump was more or less strong arming the oil companies to get the prices down as fast as they went up. I don't think they're going to cooperate with him too quickly, but I still think we have a long road before oil gets down to the levels we want to see it before this whole Iran conflict started.
Yes. Well, thank you. What I'd like to do, if you can stick around, I'm going to bring retired Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox on uh, and um, and to join our discussion. And I got some pointed questions for the Colonel as well. So thanks for chatting with us. Stick around. We'll pull you back up on screen in just a moment. Um, to our audience, Tom Lennox, everybody knows retired Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox. His extensive military and civilian biography can be found by visiting jmcbroadcasting.com. Click on contributors at the top of the navigation bar. Scroll down a bit. You'll see a picture of the colonel, and you'll see his biography and a way to link up to Tom Lennox and talk with him via email once he gets caught up on his emails. Thank you, sir, for joining us again here on the Global Financial Reset.
Thank you. Always glad to
You
be
know,
on the
we've been
financial side.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, and of course, you folks that learning about Tom Lennox, go do read that biography. You'll learn the billions of dollars he'd saved the Department of Defense and the programs he's done, his education, and as a comptroller for a period of time for the Pentagon, I believe. So the man knows a thing or two, but he's also very awake to what's going on behind the proverbial Wizard of Oz's curtain in this global defense war that we are engaged in. And to that point, sir, I want to ask you, AJ Monte was just talking about, I was thinking of you when he mentioned what's going to happen to that 39 trillion federal debt we see at usdebtclock.org. What's your view of that? What do you see happening with that bankruptcy and that money?
Well, the interesting thing is that anything that corporation did, the U.S. corporation, is illegal. And the debt that the U.S. corporation owes is gone with the total bankruptcy in March. There's no debt that can be collected from the U.S. corporation. And that's who signed all the debt with the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve is an illegal institution. Created in 1913 by people who decided they wanted to have a Federal Reserve after Andrew Jackson killed the first one in the 1830s. So when we look at it, that debt is literally a piece of paper. The piece of paper being the fiat currency that they've issued that is not anything more than a piece of paper. So we could pay off the debt by giving them $36 trillion worth of paper currency on the old U.S. corporation. That's my personal opinion.
Fascinating. Well, it makes sense. I mean, if that debt was incurred under the U.S. Corp, and even if it weren't, the Federal Reserve, as you stated, is unconstitutional and illegal. So that debt should not be owed by we the people, which is how it's been presented. And it's been often said that President Trump is presiding over the bankruptcy and the dissolution of that 1871 Corp, which we know has been dissolved. And I'm just looking forward to the day when we go to usdebtclock.org and it says zero on there. Then we know it's been officially shifted over to where it once came from. Let's bring on AJ Monte.
One other point
ahead,
I want
sir.
to make on that. We also know that the BRICS countries are now trading in gold, and that the fiat-based petrodollar no longer has any value because the countries that are using gold to transact are not using the fiat dollar. It's an interesting thought.
It is. And, you know, we've touched on this in a lot of different ways, that the transition that we're in, okay, the dollar spiked up on the dollar exchange. I looked at it my morning here. I'm half a day ahead. And it was 101, whereas a couple of weeks ago on the dollar index, we're talking about the Fed note, was like 96. So it's moving all over the map. But really, ultimately, as we've talked about before, the Fed note will come down and will at some point accelerate and come down rather hard, which is what we want, because this money is debt. It's not constitutional. At the same time, we're issuing the new currency, but it's a series of steps that I think is going to create some hiccups and uncertainties for people as these things start to take up speed. I'd like to bring AJ on and have him weigh in as well. To our producer, let's do a 3-panel discussion And we're gonna meet retired Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox. AJ,
Hello, sir. How are you?
Oh, good. And you, AJ?
Good, thank you.
you know, Tom and I have uh, we could be known to walk into the stuff that you're not going to find, even on page 30 in the New York Times. In fact, you're not going to find it anywhere near the New York Times building. And so I'm going to open up all those cans of worms there. But have you weigh in also, AJ, on that the important thing you raised before about that Federal Reserve debt. It is unconstitutional. It is illegal. The president has been dissolving it and moving the powers over to the Treasury, to my understanding, since 2019 officially, and has accelerated significantly in the last year and a half. We see all the messaging from Scott Bessent, from the president himself. What's your take? I mean, it almost seems too good to be true, right? 39 trillion that we thought was
Well,
ours isn't, and it just gets put back on their balance sheet. What do you think?
and quickly approaching 40 trillion. Unbelievable. Maybe we could get Elon Musk to help us with that, with all his trillions now. But Tom, to your point with regard to the BRICS nations, um, if JD Vance is successful in completing this Project Vault and getting the 50 countries to unite and agree in trading with the US, but trading with the US in a Treasury note rather than a Federal Reserve note, then we control all the pieces on the chessboard. I mean, Donald Trump, brilliant move in Venezuela. How quickly did we get the oil, get things under control there? Greenland is more or less fallen off the radar for a little bit, but that's all the mining rights that are there. So if you're controlling all the commodities and you have all the commodities that the world needs, you could dictate how you want to be paid, period. And they're not going to pay us in US paper dollars. It's going to be on in something that'll be gold backed. And so this is going to be an interesting transition. But I think once the wheels start going to more or less flick the switch to turn it all on, it'll happen very, very quickly. And I actually thought it would happen right around the 4th of July during the 250th birthday of our nation. I thought Donald Trump had something ready to go with the big announcement about the debt and the stable coin. We'll see. He still might. He's known to surprise us from time to time. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how this all plays out. But yeah, that 40 trillion coming on us pretty quickly. That U.S. Debt clock is moving faster than I could even keep up with. Yeah, and
Yeah.
John, just real quickly, did you notice on that U.S. debt clock where they have silver and gold value? Did you happen to notice what's happening there? It's not valued at the current
I,
market prices. I,
what
I
do
don't,
they
I don't, I
have
don't
it
know if
pegged
you.
at?
Here, let me go
It's
see. It's
valued
like
at the
it's
international prices.
no, much, much higher.
Hmm.
Let me see if I could pull that up. Let me see, US debt clock.org. They have that. Let's see, where's the silver prices? Uh, they got so much information on here now. It's crazy. No, it was priced off the charts. It was like $60,000 an ounce or something like that for gold. I don't know even know what to think of it because they don't have the notes attached on how that's even being evaluated at that level. We'll have to look that up another time. It'll take too long to find it through all this
Interesting. Yeah.
data.
But,
Well,
we're talking about the transition right now and countries. I want to break it down. We'll go to Tom Lennox. You've got countries that you were talking about before. Obviously, we're trading right now. We have the Federal Reserve note, which we built up to be the currency since the Bretton Woods Agreement, and now that's being reversed. We don't have the new Treasury note in circulation yet, and I'm just curious, in your crystal ball, Tom, how do you see the transition taking root once that Treasury note comes out as a competing currency against the Fed's note? What will nations do? How quickly will they make the transition? And what about individuals like you and me? How does that play out in the day-to-day world as one currency, Fed note, is now competing with its Treasury note?
Well, the interesting thing is there's already a treaty in place for 209 countries to trade in gold 1-for-1. It's been in existence for quite some time, and it's actually going into effect right now. What J.D. Vance is doing and what others are doing, I think, are false flags. Because if 209 countries have already agreed to go to asset-backed currency, and as soon as it's officially announced, we go to an election 120 days from that announcement. Not the midterms, but 120 days from that announcement, according to the law that was passed for Nassar Jassara. So when we look at 209 countries agreeing that they're going to trade, if I'm going to buy corn, I'm going to pay whatever the gold rate is today for that corn. And it's going to be 1-for-1, country to country. That is the theory of the Jassara and the QFS, the quantitative financial system. If a country goes to war, quantitative financial system takes all its money, so it can't go to war. But the reality of the trade becomes very interesting. I was interested in the way barter is starting to go back into place. When I talk barter, we're talking about AJ's trading off vegetables for gold and silver, or silver and gold for land. That's barter. That's the old-fashioned barter system. I know that when the Vatican gold was taken out, its estimated value was between 36 and 57 quadrillion dollars on 640 or 620 Air Force airplanes hauled that gold back to the United States, and that the Chinese elders and Trump's people and the other countries, other 209 countries, have been actually distributing the gold to make sure that everybody has the asset-backed currency they're supposed to have. This is a dramatic change in the world we live in. When it's going to be officially announced, we don't know. We do know that QFS has replaced the SWIFT system. I've experienced transferring money from the United States to Europe in 5 minutes, where it used to take almost a week. So we know that the SWIFT system is essentially gone. We also know that Putin never took it, never believed in it, never had it, that he operated separate from it. And we know that Putin, Xi, Modi, Trump have been working together on the gold-backed currency business, in spite of what we read about what's going on. There are pictures of the four of them sitting around the table doing their thing. Anyway, that's my comment on the money side to some extent.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting, Tom,
back to
because
Fort
the Chinese have
Go
been
ahead, AJ.
working on a digital gold-backed yuan for years now. And to your point, John, earlier you were talking about the revaluation of gold and silver and putting it on floor. I mean, think about what that does for your buying power. That immediately gives you more buying power, which completely cuts out the inflation almost immediately upon the new valuation. at the higher levels. So yeah, like I said, it's going to be it's going to happen very quickly.
What's interesting here from a 40,000-foot view is, as we're listening to this dialogue, you got to realize the banks, the central bank and the Federal Reserve System got to be shaking in their shorts right now. Their entire gig, their entire modus operandi since 1913 forward is being exposed, usurped, and challenged for the very, very first time. And it's a formidable challenge. And in my view, it's a battle they will lose. But I think we're going to have some retaliation of sorts. I mean, right now, as you mentioned, AJ, earlier, they've managed to, pull gold and silver back down to the levels we see this morning, just under 60 in silver and about 4,000 in gold. But there's some retaliatory moves, but at some point they're going to be losing the control because the structures that they operate in have been being redirected by the president into the Treasury, of which he's in charge of. So we're going to see some pretty severe events, in my opinion. In fact, I hate to keep quoting Juan, but I'll do that, folks, because I'll remind those that are new here. Juan knows a thing or two about currencies. He was part of a team back in the Reagan days that helped collapse the Russian ruble, which led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. And so, the Juan states, I'm paraphrasing, that we, with all that we've been through and all that we're about to deal with as Russiagate gets exposed and Fauci, Nuremberg trials begin later, and all of these critical things start to happen, the arrests from Comey on down leading to Obama, when all that, coupled with the Federal Reserve and banking system being challenged, all of these things, Juan says, the financial sector is going to be probably the most painful thing that we'll have been through in this war and operation. So any speculation from either of my guests on what games or what retaliatory moves do we think that the other side, the banking system, the Federal Reserve, the central bank, might try to pull on us while this transition's taking place? Any speculations besides what we see happening presently to either of my guests?
I'll take the first round if you don't mind. Oh, go ahead, Tom. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I don't think anything's going to happen before the midterms, because that's going to disrupt Trump's base. If all of a sudden people's 401ks are going down like they did in 2008. So whatever happened, I think it's going to be most likely happening in the first quarter of 2027 after the elections. But like I said before, the Federal Reserve and all the globalists that have the control of the fiat currencies, they're going to be kicking and screaming, because it's not just the U.S. dollar. It's going to be every fiat currency around the world that's going to go away and have to be replaced by a gold-backed currency, in whatever shape it comes in, whether it be digital or otherwise. So, like I said, it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. But you got to be ready for it. It's like, Juan O'Savin, he gives you all this information and he gives you enough room to draw your own conclusions. Well, you're trying to figure out where he got all this information from. He's like an encyclopedia when it comes to especially inside information. But I don't think anyone's going to know the exact date. I can only give you a window where I think that could happen. But I don't think we're going to see a market collapse before the elections. I think maybe even the first quarter, you're going to start to see things really rev up to the downside. And then that could be the catalyst that gets everything else moving into place. Because if the markets are crashing, think about the opportunity that Trump would have at that particular point in time. He comes in on his white horse to save the day, introducing the digital currency. And now we have a new valuation. Okay, let's stop the market from crashing right here. Let's go through the reevaluation and reprice every stock out there in this new stable coin and now people get a sigh of relief and they feel, okay, the pressure's off. The world's not coming to an end. We got a new currency. We'll have to learn how to manage that. So you should write the book on that, John. Write it now before they come out with before the first quarter of 2027. You could get one out before then, I'm sure.
Quick comment
I'm
before
going to
we
say
have
there
Colonel
won't
Lennox.
be a midterm.
Really? Wow, that's a shock. That is something.
There won't be a midterm because there are 383 congressmen and senators who are probably going to be arrested in the next 6 months because of fraud in the 2020 election. And that case went to the Supreme Court 2 years ago. The Supreme Court has decided the case, but has not released it yet. The release is going to be on Donald Trump's time. And those 383 people will go to Gitmo for treason. If they do, you can't have a midterm because there won't be anybody to run for the elections. And the other piece of it is, if he announces Nasara, there must be an election 120 days after that for all federal office, all federal positions. If there's going to be a midterm, he has to announce that on July 4th. Because if you go 120 days out from a July 4th, it becomes November 3rd. If he doesn't announce it on July 4th, Nasara, then it goes 120 days from the date it is announced, which could be any time prior to November, which would then put it out into March of 2027. The potential is, and I know John has heard this from others about the election not happening. There's a very strong possibility it will not happen.
I sat down with 107. I sat down with 107 in Bangkok, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 weeks already, for a healthy day and a half. And one of the takeaways, and then we went and recorded an episode published about 2 weeks ago where Juan mentioned it there. To your point, Colonel Lennox, Juan was pretty strongly asserting, again, we're not all always accurate. It's a fluid war and people are only read into a certain extent, but Juan is very clear on the record that there will be a pause for the midterms, and we will not be voting in November, which feeds into the narrative that you just talked about to an extent, Colonel Lennox, about the midterms being delayed. And so we're going to have to see how all that plays out. We got a lot of trigger dates to take a look at, as you've just alluded to, on July 4th and counting the 120 days. I also want to mention Tulsi Gabbard. We've talked about this. We're using the metaphor of pulling the hand grenade pins on a couple of key areas on her way out. 3 of them are Fauci, that whole situation, the biolabs, and Russiagate. These investigations from the D&I standpoint, as I understand it as a layman, are now done. So therefore, the cases can be discussed because they're not ongoing cases. They're now moving over to prosecutorial side. And that is going to be a big deal. I think these 3 issues, particularly the election theft, is going to steer the narratives between July 5th and the midterms that probably won't be happening in November. And you throw that into the mix here on top of the fact of Colonel Lennox's assertion of the majority of Congress being arrested, which, by the way, Julian Assange is on the record. And I think he said 95 or 98%. When all is said and done, they'll all be gone because of the fraud, the treason, and the crimes. So these are extraordinary statements that seem crazy, but they're actually not, folks, to our audience. Let's see how and when all of this plays out. But when President Trump said in the 2017 inauguration, I'm giving you back your country, I'm restoring the power back to the people, I think that this is all part and parcel for that. Get rid of the fake currency, get rid of those that hijacked our country in 1913, restore sound money, and restore free and fair elections. And we're not ready for that in November, it seems to me. I'm just throwing a lot of stuff at the dartboard. Any feedback or comments or any place either of you gentlemen would like to take this?
Yeah.
Colonel Lennox?
Well, there's an additional one besides the Supreme Court case. Maduro, it's Maduro, right, from Venezuela?
Yes.
Maduro. Yep.
Maduro. Maduro has
Mhm.
given the Trump's people the names of 60 senators who took money from him for the election fraud. That means 60 senators currently serving that took, and I've seen the list, and it's phenomenal. Our two great senators from Virginia are on the list. If they took that money for election fraud, that's treason. That means they go to Gitmo. That doesn't mean they
Or
run for
worse.
re-election. Doesn't mean they have an election. Means that those people have to be replaced. There's 60 of them at least. And we don't know how many congressmen are in the same category. I would venture to guess there's a whole bunch of them that are in that category that took money. So when we look at that, that's why we have, what did you say the other day, John, that we're in the second step of a 6-stage storm?
Yes. Category 6 storm. We're at category 2 level. Is the analogy being used? And the eye of that storm is between 2 and 6, and that's going to be a problem, you know.
Yep.
But Lloyd Brunson, you think about the Brunson case. A lot of people say it's dead. It's actually not. I interviewed Lloyd a couple of months ago. But if that case does finally get heard properly, and you want to talk about one fell swoop of Congress being in trouble, that alone will do it for what they did on January 6th. And I'm not talking about the insurrection that they did. I'm talking about the fact that they certified a vote that shouldn't have been certified
Yes.
based on protocols that were
Unconstitutional.
eliminated. That's right.
Yeah.
So you have that in the mix of, I would like to have an episode off of GFR one day with Colonel Lennox and some other guests and talk about pondering, of course, in speculation land, but I think it's well founded. Will there be a two-party system come the next general election? I think it'd be a fair statement to say, and this narrative's out there even from the president, that the Democrat Party is over. But you know what? So should the Republican Party be as well when you look at all the fraud and the criminals
Exactly.
and the treason that's there. So that leaves us with, well, what will we have? And that's an interesting conversation to have with the right people as well, because I don't think we'll have the Democrat and Republican Party come the general election. And that's a long ways from now. But I think the first thing that has to happen is we have to remove those that have committed the fraud. I'm talking about the people we voted for. Remove those people that have committed the fraud and the treason, and get them properly processed. And for the treason side, all that's going to take place, to Tom Lennox's point, over at Gitmo. It's a military operation. And perhaps some may process in the civilian system. It's above my pay grade to have an opinion about it. But these are sweeping statements that cannot be ignored. I'm talking to the audience. If you've tuned out and said, hey, these guys are off in lunacy land. No, we're not. I mean, take a look at what Doge exposed. We don't hear much about that, but that's not being ignored. I'm telling you, great change is coming. And as Hillary Clinton said, you expose me, you take me down, you'll take all of Washington, D.C. down with it. Well, that's exactly right. She's right about one thing for once, and that's exactly what's happening. It's a bit off topic here because we usually focus strictly on the financial, but it's hard not to bring in the politics, the geopolitics, and the dirt behind the curtain, because that
Well,
really is what
Americans,
drives.
Americans, I believe most Americans are getting impatient because they want to see justice served, and it's not. You hear a lot of people throwing the word treason around, but if you talk to any military person or veteran of the military, treason is not a misdemeanor. It is a crime against the country you live. It's against the Constitution. And years ago, if we were back in World War II, you wouldn't be going to Gitmo. You'd be going in front of a firing squad. That's how serious it is. And
Well,
so I think Americans are waiting for that day for justice to be served. And when it does, I think there's going to be a great celebration.
well, Donald Trump made a comment some 6 to 12 months ago about the oath of office. We talked about this yesterday, John, in the thing about the oath of office.
Mhm.
If you are
Yes.
were in the military, you had an oath of office that is still in effect today. I'm 81
Mhm.
years old. I took that oath of office when I was 22. That oath of office is still valid to serve and
That's
defend the Constitution of the United States.
You're still under oath.
Still under
Yeah,
oath. And if you took that oath when you were in the Navy, you're still under that oath.
absolutely.
And so when we talk about oaths of office and we start looking at the judges and the lawyers sign an oath of office to the British Accreditation Registry, not to the US Constitution. The
Mhm.
judges the same way. So we're talking about huge changes that have to come about, and they impact the financial system in huge ways because everybody who processes a tax return that works for the IRS has to have an oath of office. Have you ever received a letter from the IRS? Is it ever signed by anybody? No, never signed by anybody. The reason is they don't take an oath of office. And to process yours and my tax dollars, they have to have an oath of office. Can't have an oath of office if the IRS is illegal, which it is. And that's been proven by former IRS agents that I've read their testimonies. Unbelievable. So
Mm.
it's a very interesting time we live in. Very interesting.
It is. Colonel Lennox, would you take just a brief moment? We're going to wind this broadcast down next 5 minutes or so, but I want to make an announcement to everyone listening because we are live on a lot of platforms at 10 p.m. tonight. So when this broadcast is finished, please, your Wednesday evening, or maybe want to watch it in the morning, we're publishing an episode, a special broadcast we recorded that Colonel Lennox just alluded to yesterday. It was Colonel Lennox, Captain Rob Cunningham, Will Barney, Christy Allen, and myself. You'll want to watch that episode. We broke down very specifically what the 250 UFC event was really all about. We talked deeply about the ending of Admiralty Maritime Law and the 1871 Corp and all the symbolism that was represented at that UFC event. But Colonel Lennox, if you would take just a moment and talk about that bar that you just alluded to and what change is going to take place now over the years to come concerning the lawyers and the judges. Now that admiralty law is nothing to do with us as we're restoring our constitutional republic.
When we were born, our birth certificate began being traded on the stock exchange. Every person with a birth certificate. That, under admiralty law, when you go into court, you are not a person, you're a corporation. The judge can do anything that judge wants to do, and you don't have anything to say about it. What happens when we go back to the republic and we go to common law / law of the land, the judges and the lawyers, who are all Bar Association, right? Actually, British Accreditation Registry, who've signed an oath to the British Accreditation Registry, those judges and lawyers are no longer valid. And if they've been using the term Esquire at the end of their name, they're violating the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which prohibits individuals in the U.S. from calling themselves royalty. Esquire means royalty. So when we look at the change that has to happen, every single lawyer and judge in this country will have to be re-educated in the law of the land. The one judge I'm sure won't have to be re-educated is Clarence Thomas, because he already knows. I think that's a summary of what we talked about yesterday. John, is there any more that I missed?
No, well, we talked about a lot of things, but regarding the bar and the lawyers and judges, yes, that was kind of what I wanted you to cover, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
You know, as we wrap this broadcast up, and we'll go to each guest to close out, you know, great change on so many fundamental fronts is underway, and that's confusing. Because it is a military operation. We're getting some facts, we're getting some disinformation, we're not getting a lot of information we need. And on the other hand, we're getting some information we need. And so it's a bit unsettling. But those of faith, number one, have faith. Number two, trust the plan. There is a plan. It's called a military operation. The Q board gave us enough clues and crumbs over the years to help us with that. And we find ourselves today changing the SWIFT system, changing the banking system, changing the way money moves, changing money itself, how countries interact together, who's in control of the energy, oil, for example. We've got the suppressed patents of Tesla and others, free energy, zero gravity. You've got off-world entities being, not crazy talk. These are official top secret files that President Donald J. Trump is responsibly releasing to the public. When you throw all these things, plus all the quotes from Elon Musk about high universal income, no need to work anymore unless you choose to, no need to save money, folks, the IRS dissolution and repurposing, same with the Federal Reserve. When you look at all of these subjects, and there's probably a whole lot more, we didn't even get into health. These are great changes, and everyone should just batten down their hatches, whittle down your sources of information to those you think are most credible, do your own research, and come to your own decisions. But in terms of to bring it back into the financial, we'll go to AJ and we'll close out with Tom. Coming back to the reason I threw all that at the marker board is because these things are happening. We're talking about people being executed for treason. We're talking about Nuremberg 2.0 trials. We're talking about great change that is long overdue. And I believe this is all God ordained. I believe President Trump was divinely chosen. We put him in office all 3 times. Thank you, Derek Johnson, for the dash. And here we are. about to make and in the process of all these incredible changes. Having said that, and bringing it back to the financial world, AJ, the dangers and opportunities that are before us right now, what educational talking points can you provide for people so that they avoid the pitfalls and seize the opportunities through this transition?
You know, I'm glad you brought up the topic of faith and change in particular, because if you think about it, and you could ask anyone that you know this question, change makes most people uncomfortable, wouldn't you think? I mean, a lot of folks feel comfortable in the status quo. They want to be in that comfort zone. Well, if you're in that place, you're not growing, in my opinion. You got to push yourself out of the comfort zone, and even if it is, studying, like I said about options, that might not be a comfort zone for you, but pushing yourself to learn it will help you understand the mechanics of what's happening in the market. And the education that you put yourself through is a risk-free investment. That's what we do here at stickytrades.com. We teach people how to manage the markets and how to manage their emotions. Secondly, and I think it's important to bring this up, I don't know what your viewers, the average viewer, what their faith is, what their belief system is. I can only speak for myself. The change that we are about to see will be historic. Again, this is my opinion based on my analysis. It will be historic. If you don't embrace it, then the opposite is going to take place and you're going to fear it, because what's the opposite of faith? Fear. So, like John said, have the faith, but more importantly, I would say take the time, find a quiet place in your home, a room, an office somewhere, and daily take at least 15 minutes, be completely quiet, ask God Almighty to give you the gift of discernment. That's important, because when it comes time to make a decision, you want to know the difference between what's truth and what's a lie. If you don't know the difference, you're going to be confused, and confusion leads to more fear. So this makes common sense. Find your faith. If you haven't worked on that, find it. It's going to be very important. It's one of the greatest tools that you will have moving into this era of change. Think about this, and then I'll hand it back to you, John. We were all born with a purpose in life. You were born into this time period for a reason. The changes that are about to take place might be difficult for some, maybe easy for others, but you were born to be here. You were born to go through this time in history. Embrace it, be excited about it, and share it with others. And make sure you find people like yourself that are like-minded. Build groups of neighbors, friends, family that think like you, and come together with them and share those ideas with them. And there's safety in numbers. So with that, keep the faith, don't fear, embrace it, and be ready for it, and fulfill the purpose that you have put out to live here and on this earth. And that's all I have to say about that, John. Back to you.
Thank you, sir. Very well said. Colonel Lennox, would you like to close us out and take us anywhere you'd like?
The first thing I would want to say is that there's a guy who was at Harvard that I studied a little bit of, read his book, named Cotter. Cotter said it takes 10 years for people to accept change. He said the first 3 years they're going to fight it. The next 3 years they're going to kind of work at it. In the last 4 years they'll start to adopt it. I've seen that at work because I wrote a paper back in 1990s on changing a major change in the U.S. Army. That change happened, and it took 10 years for the people to finally accept the fact that the control and operation of the installations in the Army was moving to a new process. Now, I love what you said about faith and spirituality, because one of the things I understand about med beds and the QFS, is that it will operate on your vibration and frequency. It will not operate on reading your eyes. It will not operate on reading your fingerprints, but it will operate on your personal vibration and frequency. And your vibration and frequency is tied to that, what I call spirituality. And if your vibration and frequency are wrong and you do something illegal, you're going to lose all your resources. It's that simple. You watch the fear that's in the eyes of the people that have been controlling us for years and years, and you see that fear because all their financial resources are gone, literally gone. Donald Trump has taken them away from them. And he hasn't announced how much he's taken, but there's a lot. So I look at spirituality as the most important thing we have. And the analogy that faith is the opposite of fear is exactly correct. And the way I feel about the spiritual nature of our people is we are being given the opportunity to ascend, or we're given the opportunity to stay where we are. If we stay where we are, we will find that life will be very, very difficult. If we choose to ascend and move forward, we will be in a world of abundance. The world of abundance that comes from debt-free, slave-free, sovereign individuals. I guess that's it, John.
Thank you, sir. So well said. Have faith in the Almighty, folks, and have faith in the plan. It's unfolding in God's time. I always said this: pecking order, God, Trump, military, white hats, and we the people. Victory is ours. We are moving from dark to light. This is a battle between good and evil, and we know who always wins. So ground yourself in faith and take the necessary steps on all fronts, physically, spiritually, mentally, and financially. And surround yourself, as AJ mentioned, with like-minded people who do understand the times in which we live, and expand those circles. And you remember the movie Jaws? Get her bigger boat. A lot of people saying they're running out of popcorn. Get her bigger bucket, because with uncharted waters yet ahead till the light shines here in the golden age. It's been a different type of GFR broadcast, but I've enjoyed it very much. Thank you very much, AJ Monte, for joining us here, and returning retired Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox. And again, folks, you'll want to watch the special broadcast that we just recorded yesterday. It's just been published as we speak. Be sure to catch that tonight or tomorrow, where we break down that America is free at last from Admiralty law. Make no mistake about it. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for being here, and I'll be right back after this important announcement.
Don't miss this month's live Patriot Q&A hour, as John Michael Chambers hosts our Patriot Power guest, private investigative journalist Mike King. Get your questions answered. Mark your calendars. June 25th, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time sharp. Visit jmcbroadcasting.com and click on the Premium Portal Sign-Up tab. Enter your password and you're in. Not a JMC Broadcasting Premium member yet? You could be. Simply click on the Premium Portal Sign-Up tab. Enter your info, and that's it. John and Mike, looking forward to answering your questions for the solid hour. See you there. Where we go one, we go all.
Action changes things. Visit wealthcoachuniversity.com. 10 free video modules there to walk you through evergreen but important information on how to get out of the system to an extent. These modules are free. wealthcoachuniversity.com. Also, Brandon Clark, if you are retired, it's a very specialized area. Last thing you want to get caught in is a severe market turn down, correction down when you're retired, because the working years are behind you. You've got to secure safely your assets, and you're looking for a guaranteed income. Brandon Clark, give him a call, triadretire.com. It's been up on the screen. Also, of course, Bill Armour, my contact for acquiring physical, tangible gold and silver. Boy, what a buying opportunity right now. And I don't, when I speak the truth. 2 weeks ago in the first pullback, I redirected some of the operational cash that I have to run JMC Broadcasting into another round of silver and gold. And I'm in the process of doing that again today as we speak. If you have IRAs, 401ks, you're still in a lot of the potentially dangerous positions right now, consider gold and silver and give my resource a call, Mr. Bill Armour. You see JMCGenesisMetals.com. I'm available on a very limited basis for those that would like to speak about anything concerning all the issues that we are engaged in this global defense war as we take back our constitutional republic. And if you need assistance in wealth coaching, I am available. Visit wealthcoachuniversity.com. We can meet on a private Zoom room. There's a way to secure that time with me by visiting, again, wealthcoachuniversity.com. So those are some proactive things that we can do to get further educated, put a team together, and sail through this without stepping on the landmines, and take advantage of the tremendous opportunities, particularly in gold and silver right now and select cryptos. Next week, joining us is Will Barney and Bill Armour for the Will and Bill Hour. This will be the final weekly live. Do join us each and every month. We'll be publishing the dates well in advance for the live GFR monthly. And we've got a new configuration of how we're going to do it with a particular panel. It's going to be very, very valuable. So thank you for following us on the GFR. And Mike King, well, that's about 11 hours from now. I'll come join us Thursday, June 25th, 8 p.m. Eastern. We will be in our private Zoom room. Sole purpose, one whole hour for Mike King to answer your questions. Very popular. We had Juan O'Savin last month. We've had Mike Jaco. We've had Will Barney. We've had Derek Johnson and others. This month we have Mike King. Next month is Sheila Holm. But join us tomorrow. Mike King, June 25th, 8 p.m. Eastern. How do you get there? jmcbroadcasting.com. Click on Premium Portal and see if this is a fit for you. If it is, we look forward to seeing you there. And we want to thank Mike King in advance for his time and deep research. I'm sure he can answer many of your questions. You can subscribe for free at jmcbroadcasting.com for our free newsletter and my JMC Audio Unplugged in your inbox every Friday. You can also consider to sign up for our Premium Portal, learn all about the benefits, which include the monthly Patriot Q&A hour. That's a wrap. I want to thank AJ Monte for joining us. I want to thank our good friend, retired Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox, for coming back and visiting us. And again, folks, I can't stress enough, that special broadcast we recorded yesterday with Rob Cunningham, Tom Lennox, Will Barney, and Christy Allen is extraordinary. It's one for the records. It should be viewed and shared far and wide. It was electrifying. We worked off each other's inspiration and knowledge, and I walked us through the UFC and what it really meant in terms of freeing America at last. So thank you all for being here. Stay safe, everyone, and may God be with you.
The Truth About Health premieres this month as a weekly JMC Broadcasting production with Christy Lee as your show host. Christy Lee is an award-winning former mainstream news anchor and independent journalist with more than 20 years of experience in broadcasting. Honored as Best Anchor and Best Enterprise Reporting honors, she later anchored at a Fox affiliate in California before walking away from legacy media after witnessing its deepening lack of journalistic integrity and shift toward propaganda. Christy is a fearless voice for the voiceless and a staunch advocate for holding power accountable. She's been featured on Fox News, The Bongino Report, InfoWars, Lindell TV, and numerous independent platforms nationwide. She has interviewed high-profile figures including RFK Jr., Dr. Robert Malone, General Michael Flynn, Ron Paul, Carrie Lake, and many more. The Truth About Health premieres June 2026 as a weekly JMC Broadcasting production. This weekly broadcast features expert doctors, scientists, and healthcare professionals. We don't reject science, we go further in it. We go beyond symptoms, headlines, and hype, bringing you the truth about what actually heals the body. Thorough healthcare coverage, including new technologies, legislation, and justice, will also be addressed. Sign up for free at jmcbroadcasting.com and tune into The Truth About Health with Christy Lee, only on jmcbroadcasting.com.